Hey YouTube, this is Jurrac Master. I thought I would show you some cards that I think are really good that you might want to main deck. I've featured all of them in some of my deck videos, so you should be familiar with how to use them. If you haven't watched the other videos, just watch. They'll explain everything about how to use them. But I'm going to be talking about how they're good, why they're good, and what makes them good in this format with the ban list, and how some of the Jurracs work better right now than others. So, first off, a card that I think that even if you don't run the Flamebell build, you should main deck, or even consider main decking, not really should main deck, is Flamebell Firedog. He comes out, he's 1900, and he can bring out either Golem or Aolo. And Aolo, as you know, is basically any Jurrac that you have in your grave, except for the high-level ones, which isn't really so much a problem, because you can then synchro with Firedog. So, he's very good. He makes pretty much any level synchro you want, except level 8, unless you're running Flamebell Magician, in which case that's kind of his move. So he's worth main decking because, especially, most things don't come out with 1900 attack as level 4s, so he's good to play, just because he works with fire monsters and Jurracs are fire. Next up, I'm going to be talking about another card that's worth main decking, especially if you use 3 Aolo. Just throw in a Rekindling or 2 if you use a lot of Aolos, because it brings out Aolo. So, even if you only have 1 Aolo, it's basically a free monster reborn for that Aolo in the grave. And that's basically any Jurrac. So, it's like having 4 monster reborns, and they can get even better if you have 3 Aolo in grave. It's like playing a triple reborn. And it can synchro, and it's just a really good card to throw in. I've been working on trying to main deck that in a regular Jurrac deck, without Flamebells in it at all, just that. If you want to run a field spell card, this is the card I recommend. As I've said, I don't really like playing Jurrac World, or Jurassic World. My bad, I call it Jurrac World when I'm playing with my friends. It's kinda fits the deck. I like that because it's a bigger boost and it affects all fire monsters, which can be troublesome if you face another fire deck, in which case it doesn't really help either of you unless you switch them to defense position or they switch you to defense position. In which case, Jurracs weren't going to win in defense position anyways, unless you're running Jurrac Terra, and I don't. So, it's a good card to consider maybe main decking 1 or 2. It just works right now if you're afraid of getting over monsters. I don't think it's necessary though, because a lot of good decks are running a lot of small monsters right now. So, unless you face Gladiator Beasts, attack points shouldn't be a problem. Hoplimus and Laquari, basically. And then they're just going to try to Murmillo you with something. So, another good card to main deck, Gozen Match, because a lot of good decks are using a lot of different attributes right now, like Tengu plants, Tengu anything, and with Frog Monarchs, they can't tribute for a monster of a different attribute. So, no tributing that stupid Treeborn Frog for that Ryza or Caius. Yeah, they're pretty much stuck with that. So, that there's just a good card because you're running basically all fire monsters. If you run that, though, I would suggest thinking about not running Kinkabayo, or if you're going to use it, just be aware of the fact that if you use that before you've played your Kinkabayo, that could be a very potential dead draw later in the game. And finally, Skill Drain. Jurracs, if you want to build a build, you could just use 3 Skill Drain, since it is at 3 again, and just run over everything with big Jurrac monsters. And since Aolo right here, since his effect is a cost, you can still bring back monsters with him, so he doesn't die when the deck goes to Skill Drain. So, it's a good card to consider main decking. And lastly, I want to talk about this guy. Since it is a weak monster format, he can run over pretty much everything you're gonna see except gladiators, in my opinion. And you don't want to bump heads with a Tengu. That's the problem with Jurracs right now. You have to watch out for Tengu, because they'll just bump heads with you, seeing as you're always like 1700, which is one reason why I like running a Fire Dog sometimes, because Fire Dog gets over Tengu. So what if they bring out another one? You just bring out something in Synchro and kind of just make sure that you have good back row. It's a good card right now, and the Guaiba still gets over most other things right now. So it doesn't really need an attack boost, and you don't really need to shrink them. I would be putting Forbidden Lance in here, because it can protect you, and it can shrink the opponent if you're stuck in a pinch. I know I don't really come across as thinking that I need that, but minus 800 attack is pretty good to do. The only problem is I don't really find room for Forbidden Lance most of the time. If I get them, I'll play around with it, but I'm not going to try it on Dueling Network. So if I get Forbidden Lances, I'll work with it. I don't really want to proxy them, because it just doesn't work for me. So you can mess around with it on your own, and that's about all I have to say. Thanks for watching.